Welcome to Epilogue Podcast, the show where we discuss some stuff that happened on a different show ages ago which nobody really cares about anymore.
Hi, I'm Portponky.
And I'm LeBloc.
Today, we're discussing Deep Space Nine, Season 7, Episode 21, When It Rains, ... Gowron takes charge of the remaining Klingon fleet. Kira, Garak, and Odo help Damar's resistance. Bashir and O'Brien discover Section 31 created the morphogenic virus.
So we are continuing with the unending storylines, the fluid episodes, and they're still great.
Pretty much. I don't know where to even begin talking about this one because it's just a part of a bigger story. You kind of just want to go on to the next one.
So I guess that's it, everyone. We're moving on to the next episode.
All right, next episode. Well, there's a few things I want to say.
Oh, okay.
They finally admit that Odo's liquid state is called goo.
That was weird. It seems like that should be offensive.
If he asked it of a human patient, then yes, I imagine. Well, they'd probably be a bit confused, but yeah. It's a somewhat uncaring way to talk about someone's bodily fluids.
But it's not just fluid. That's what he is. That's all he is that stuff. Let me have a piece of your being that I'm going to reduce to goo.
It's odd, especially from Bashir, who's usually quite well-spoken. I guess they wanted to slip one goo reference in there before the end of the show.
He is usually well-spoken, and he is a doctor, so he would have medical terminology swirling around his head. But he's also prone to being inappropriate, so he would step that line. So I could see him being stupid enough to say something offensive.
His bedside manner is questionable. Oh, and O'Brien called him out on his ethics.
Which I was happy about.
But something quite minor. He was correct to call him out on that. He shouldn't be doing that as a doctor. But where were you, O'Brien, all the other times when Bashir was doing things far worse?
Maybe he didn't know this was the first time he was witness to something horrible.
To continue with the Bashir and O'Brien storyline, I guess we should just talk about each separate story block in turn. Yeah, Section 31 have been up to tricks.
A serious trick. And I love how this one develops. At first you think it's just about keeping these files hidden because they don't want a cure to be made because of the other founders. But then you found out it's even worse. They started it and they used Odo to spread this disease, and that's so much more messed up.
It's worse than that. They started it when he was at Earth, so season 4, before the Dominion War really got going.
So genocide is not a problem for section... Why do I keep forgetting the number?
31.
Section 31.
I'd like to point out that so far, all they've done is attempted genocide. And we have seen that attempted genocide is worth 6 months in the can, because that's what Garak got for attempted genocide. So it's not serious yet. The timing is odd. If Odo was infected then, he should be showing the symptoms earlier than the founders.
especially because he was a tiny concentration of goo. So, I don't know how the thing works, but I would imagine it would be diluted in the Great Link and take longer to spread.
Well, yeah, certainly a disease will spread quicker through an individual than it will through a population.
You would think.
There's a lot of fan reasoning about why he doesn't show symptoms until they find out he has the virus. The obvious answer is it's plot reasons. But one of the common lines of reasoning, which I've seen in a fair few places, and I'm going to completely disagree with, is that he contracted it in season 4, then spread it to the Great Link at the end of season 4, where he got made solid, which cured him of the virus. And then he recontracted it in season 6 when he linked with the female changeling.
Well, why do you completely disagree with that?
It's a common theory. It's wrong because in this episode, Bashir charts the progress of the virus and works backwards to find out the stardate at which he contracted it.
Oh, right. That would have pushed it past being a human. It wouldn't project before that. That makes sense.
Yeah. So, if you hold that opinion, your opinion is wrong. But there is another more shocking piece of evidence. At the end of, or near the end of season 5, there was an episode, Children of Time, where in the Gamma Quadrant, which, by the way, this is the last time they went to the Gamma Quadrant. They haven't been back up until this point. They crash and find their descendants, or they find that their descendants have crashed. And we got old Odo.
Right.
He hadn't died from the morphogenic virus.
Maybe he doesn't have it. And this is all a lie.
Maybe it's not fatal unless it's in a link. Who knows? I don't really care, I guess, what the explanation is. I'm sure an explanation could be drafted that would explain all these points. It's not too important. Not to me, anyway.
Yeah, I don't really care. It didn't even come up in my head while I was watching. I get what they're going for, and I like that the consequences are dire, and I don't mind convenient plot stuff when it's bad for the characters.
I find it odd how people will endlessly bicker about the properties of a fictitious shapeshifter virus, which is a fictional virus based on a fictional type of creature. And they will argue about how specifically it works when you have no idea. It's completely made up.
What matters is that Odo is starting to flake.
He is. He got the flakes on his hand pretty bad. And Bashir and O'Brien have launched their quest, I guess, to find a cure, which they suspect Section 31 has. I didn't quite understand why he thinks that.
That was weird. If they gave Odo disease, they must have a cure. Why? Why would you think that? How would you reach from that they gave him the disease that, oh yeah, surely they have a cure?
I could see why they would have a cure, because in a war where there is a chance that you could be massively outgunned, you don't want to have a unstoppable genocide occurring. Well, maybe you do. I don't know.
It's targeted at changelings, and they don't have changelings on their side. Well, in their head. They don't care about Odo. He's just a casualty of this.
I guess what I'm saying is that a cure would be a hugely powerful bargaining chip, so I could see them having one. But again, it's Section 31. I could easily see them not having one because they tend to go all in.
Right, and you could bargain the cure without having it. They don't know. You could just say you have a cure.
Oh, that's true. They probably don't have a cure then.
There's no reason for them to have a cure unless they had changelings on staff.
They did construct the virus, though, and the construction may be useful to make a cure, perhaps.
Okay. Yes.
Did they construct it, or they? Section 31 are somehow responsible, so I assume they know more than Bashir knows. Then
If
again,
anyone has knowledge that could lead to a cure, Section 31 has it.
yeah, that's fair. So let's swap plot threads. Who should we tackle next?
Kira.
Team Kira. Kira, Garrick, Odo meeting up with Damar. A lot of very powerful and deep characters. And Odo. That's harsh.
Do you mean literally or physically? Are we going back to Odo being hollow?
No, I just mean we're talking about the other episodes. Odo seems a little spent. I guess not anymore, because now he's infected. That's high stakes. But Garrick reappears after being absent for a fair few episodes.
I love this little team because they are the most qualified for this sort of thing. As Cisco said, Kira is exactly what the situation calls for. You want her there, but then this is awful for her to have to team up with Damar and the Cardassians, and then they have to also rely on Garrick, who would be an expert at this sort of thing. So I love that these characters are tossed in there because it all makes sense, and I want to see what happens when you get these people bumping into each other.
I've got a good feeling for the Resistance. They've thrown they've thrown Kira and Garrick at the problem. I mean, Damar is a competent guy. Now he's got Kira, who defines competency, and Garrick, who will get any job done. And Odo's really useful as well. This is their A team.
This is the best team they could have assembled. We've often made fun of the teams they break out into. Why is Bashir doing this right now, or whatever? But this is the team you want for this mission. It makes complete sense.
I do like the Bashir and O'Brien team. Just to hop back, they're the two guys who I think would be the most fun to infiltrate Section 31.
Sure, they're a team that arises out of the circumstance. They're buddies and they discover this thing that they want to do. They weren't assigned it.
We got to see Kira in a Starfleet uniform, if you care about that.
Nope. But it feels like it's hinting at something.
I think it's just trying to remind the viewers who the good guys are. I don't know.
I also really love that plot line because they thrust into our face that Odo was a collaborator. And it's not something I thought about. And I'm glad that the show said, hey, this should be a problem for these two. Think about this. And she got all worked up.
He was a collaborator to an extent. Everyone did things they weren't proud of during the occupation.
I'm not judging him.
Yes, you are.
But, well, okay. I'm judging Odo harshly. But I still... It's probably something they never talked about because they don't want to. And then it is kind of a problem.
The past is the past. I think...
Doesn't Gowron say that? No. Go ahead.
I think it's more interesting that Damar killed Zial Akira brought this up briefly. Garrick didn't seem to care too much. Xiao was his IRL girlfriend. He is kind of a psychopath, so I could see him just extinguishing the feelings for the time being.
Oh, yeah. Whatever the situation calls for, as long as it's not a tiny hallway, a tiny cramped space.
He actually also pushed those feelings aside. So,
you're right.
According to the show notes, the reason they didn't hammer on about Xiao is because it kind of makes Damar look like a massive jerk.
It does.
The tensions are already at their highest point. They don't need to sort of muddy the waters there. Kira discussed actual terrorist tactics.
She did. She would know.
Yeah, she was talking about arranging cells, attacking weakened targets, attacking your own people. If they're not with you, they're against you. That sort of stuff. I can't imagine a character on a TV show nowadays using these tactics. Like a good guy character.
I was just about to add that. I could see a person you're not supposed to like talking about these tactics.
In a sense, it's a shame. Because it's a really complicated subject. It's not simple. I'm not saying the terrorists are good guys or they can be the good guys. Obviously the bad guys. But the other guys can also be bad guys. I don't know. It's really complicated, and I just think it would be treated in a very puerile way nowadays.
I don't see modern television challenging audiences in this specific way. Maybe they would. I mean, it happened already. We have this show. But it's, I guess after 9/11, it's different the way audiences view terrorism and what they're willing to hear around that subject.
Because that's the narrative of the times. People don't complain about the French resistance in World War II because they were blowing up Nazis, and that's fine. Were they justified in doing that? Probably. Oh, God. That's a complicated question, and that's kind of what Kira was bringing up, that edge of the sword.
But as someone objects to what she's saying or what she's suggesting, she says plainly, you will lose, because they'll know if you don't attack your own people, they'll use that against you. Which they should have been using Odo to protect themselves from the founders, but whatever.
They kind of have, but it's always been slightly coincidental.
Yeah, they kept forgetting that was a thing they could do.
They don't just stash him on a random ship in the fleet and say, whoa, you can blow up our ships, but you never know. You might be killing a founder.
That would have been great if Odo had that realization. Oh, we could have been using me. But that's silly. I don't actually think he should have said that.
They would make the show too easy. They would come up with a reason why that would be silly.
They have Odo-Dar.
Yes, Odo distance and ranging.
Exactly.
Moving on to another plot thread, what have we got? Decat and Win, or Cisco and the Klingons?
Let's go with Kai Wen and her joy over Ducat's blindness.
Do you feel sorry for Decat? He's blinded.
Weirdly, he's never been helpless before.
I don't feel sorry for him.
He got kicked out to the streets. He's done horrible things.
Not only has he done horrible things, but he's done basically many, many war crimes and wants and eagerly wants to commit more war crimes.
Yeah, but he wants to wipe out the Bajorans, and I think that might help them out.
Weed out the ones that die easily. That would be all of them. They're not. All of the awesomeness from Bajorans went into Kira. The rest of them, hopeless.
Right, so I don't care about any of them except Kira. If these Palrites targeted Kira, then I would care more.
I think the Paradise will have wider consequences than just Bajor.
Yeah, that makes sense. In my head, I'm thinking it's just Bajor, and then if that's the case, then no one will care.
Everyone would care. Cisco would care. Well, I say everyone. The viewers might not. We got the return of Gowron, who we haven't seen for probably since season 5. The Federation and the Romulans are out for the count, so it's just the Klingons, and they're outnumbered 20-1.
It could be worse.
Yes, it could be worse.
Well, they stumbled into protection against the energy dampening, at least.
Yeah, they got through that with the skin of their teeth. Now they have Gowron saying that they should run in and attack. How do you think that will go?
Awful.
Yes, I also think it will be awful.
I don't see that working at all.
We got a lot of Martok time, which was quite a treat.
It was, but there wasn't a lot going on with that plot thread. Not that there needed to be. The other two are really meaty, but this one was just kind of happening.
It was developing. It's a more political plot thread, so it doesn't need intense analysis. They just need to do the stuff and say, well, this sounds like we're all going to die. That's pretty silly, Gowron. It's probably the lightest plot thread because Michael Dorn, Worf, was directing.
Okay, I noticed that, and I was going to ask whether this was the first one. I usually don't look at who directed it, but I happened to notice that it was Michael Dorn this time.
No, it's his third directorial credit. He's done 2 other episodes of Deep Space Nine before this.
Good job, Dorn.
Do you have a quote that you'd like to share with us?
I don't need to be reminded who my enemies are.
Now I'm drawing a blank. It's
Lor Rusat.
Oh yeah, okay, so there's a lot of characters who have enemies at the moment, so so maybe I do need to be reminded.
A handy chart wouldn't be so bad, so you know who your enemies are. You don't want to make a mistake.
There needs to be a flowchart here. Bad guys are turning into good guys are turning into bad guys. Political alliances are being created and broken. Anything could happen. Well, not anything. It's a show that's already run. So
one specific thing can happen.
Will happen. We just don't know what it is. Well, I do. Would you like to know what it is?
Yes.
The only way to find out, well, not the only way, but the probably best way of finding out is by watching the next episode.
I choose that option.
Let's do it. Let's go and do that. Because this stuff is super exciting.
You sound like that didn't sound sincere.
No, it is. I just want to splurge the last few episodes, but like watching them and then podcasting in between, it must have been killer to watch this when it was on TV every week.
This is stellar stuff. I'm loving this conclusion. But that's not a conversation for now.
All right, let's move on.
Bye.
But yeah, goodbye.